Good afternoon, Old Gun Guy here. Welcome to my video on the quintessential American rifle cartridge, the .30 Winchester centerfire, also known as the 30-30 Winchester. That's that cartridge there. And it's going to be in three parts because I got three different rifles, all firing the same cartridge. But part one of this is going to be the 1894 Winchester, or Model 94 Winchester lever action rifle, which the cartridge was designed for in 1895, and that would be this rifle here. This will be part one. Part two will be Winchester's main competition. This is a Marlin 336. This is 1977 vintage. And then last up will be another competitor you don't see too often, Savage, model 1899. This one was made in 1914. That'll be part three. I just had them out for a demonstration. But first I'm going to go into the cartridge, the history, and uses, and then I'll delve into the rifle. Then I will go outside. It's a little windy outside, so I decided to do the intro in here and not under the table. The leaves are all coming down. It's that time of year, it's fall. It's deer season. The 30-30 Winchester was in, the parent cartridge was a 3855 Ballard black powder cartridge. They took that case, and when they were experimenting at the dawn of the smokeless powder age at the very end of the 19th century, they developed a smokeless powder cartridge from that case. They necked it down to 30 caliber, and it became 30 Winchester centerfire. And John Browning designed the 94 Winchester rifle, an evolution of his earlier 1892 Winchester. The action is longer to handle the longer cartridge, but this is the first commercially produced smokeless powder cartridge, 30 caliber, and it's been around 130 years because it's extremely useful. It is of modest power and modest accuracy and modest recoil, but it serves well over the many decades of its existence. It was developed in 1895. Obviously it was by the Winchester Company, the original Winchester Company, and they named it 30 Winchester centerfire. In fact, this rifle is an old example of it, is marked on the barrel 30 WCF Winchester centerfire. The 30-30 designation came later on with the competition not wanting to advertise Winchester's cartridge on their guns. So they named it the 30-30. That's a holdover from the black powder naming conventions of the 19th century, where you had the caliber and then a charge of black powder, and sometimes the third number was a bullet weight. So a 30 caliber, 30 grains of powder, but it was smokeless powder, and some of the early smokeless powders were around 30 grains. It wasn't black powder though. In fact, some of my old loads, loading data that I've used over the years, using IRMAR 3031, it's around 30 grains of IRMAR 3031 for a 30-30 load. But it was designed for this rifle, the 1894 Winchester, and another design from the genius of John Browning. Very reliable, very robust rifle, but the cartridge, propels, over its history, it's been loaded with bullets from 55 grains to 180 grains. 40, 50 years ago, they had I think Remington had it, they called it the accelerator. It was a 223 55 caliber projectile in a sabot, plastic sabot in a 30-30 case, and they had one for the 30-06 too. I don't think it was very accurate, and it kind of faded off. The bullet weights you're going to see today in any type of factory ammunition, basically three bullet weights: 150 grain, 160, and 170. in just about any store loaded with conventional flat nose or round nose bullets, you're going to find 150 or 170 grains. The 160 grains come from the recent Hornady FTX flex tip projectile, which are ballistically efficient. They're spire point, but they got a rubber polymer tip on the front that prevents chain fire in a tubular magazine, which most lever guns have. The magazine goes under the barrel, and the cartridges are bullet tip to primer. So you need a flat or round nose bullet to prevent an accidental chain fire in a magazine. A rare occurrence, but it could happen. In Europe, they call this cartridge, the metric designation I think is 762 by 51 millimeter R, meaning rimmed. The 3030 is a rimmed cartridge, center fire, large rifle primer. The case is 51 millimeters long. It is 30 caliber. It uses 308 thousandths of an inch projectiles. The normal rifling twist for the 3030 is 1 inch and 1 turn and 12 inches of travel, 1 inch 12 twist. It operates at a max chamber pressure of 42,000 psi. They have the old CUP, copper units of pressure standard, but I won't go into that. PSI is a little more easy to understand. The velocities, I wrote a few of my hand loading notes down here. Yeah, 150 grain bullets, you can get maybe 2,400 feet a second out of a 24-inch barrel. Most of the 30-30 or 30 Winchester centerfire rifles have a 20-inch barrel, like this example here. But they did make them in 24, and they also made them in 16. 16-inch barrel, the Winchesters. Early on, it was loaded with lead bullets, the 30-30, and the velocities attainable with smokeless powder led to bad fouling of the barrel with the lead. So this cartridge here is one of the early drivers of copper jacketed projectiles, which eliminated the leading problem. It is a modest powered cartridge. Just about every animal, game animal or otherwise, in North America and probably South America was killed with this cartridge, 30-30, 30 Winchester centerfire. Is it, Alaskan brown bears have been killed with it. Is it designed for that? No. Notice I said killed, there might have been an encounter, and you have what you have, a 30-30. Proper shot placement, proper bullet can get the job done, but it's not recommended for that purpose. It's taken elk and moose and caribou and black bear and you name it, coyote, wolves. There's light handy carbines that are designed to fire it, modest range. The 30-30 really is for hunting purposes, say a max 200-yard cartridge. For deer, it's a combination of the bullet shape, most of the loadings, the flat point with a round nose, sheds velocity quicker, has more of a rainbow-like trajectory at distance. The velocity and the energy. 150 grain bullets, 24 feet, 100 feet a second. 170 grain bullets, 2,200 feet a second. And the later Hornady lever revolution, which are very fine bullets, they're a 160, and the powder they use, the lever revolution powder, it propels the projectiles pretty good clip, 2,300, 2,350. The cartridge is ideally suited for deer-sized game at modest distances, up to 200 yards. Let me refer to my notes here. Edit that out. Okay, just some paper ballistics that I pulled off one Sierra and two Hornady's website. Basically, you sight the 30-30 170 grain projectile at 150 yards. It'll be 4 inches low at 200. It'll be 1.5 inches high at 100. So that's basically your hunting range. The 250 yards is 11 or 12 inches low. So it's still possible to, shoot deer, broadside shot. If you have a scope, put the crosshairs on the back of the animal, and the drop should be around the heart, lower lung portion of the chest. But no lever guns attack driver. They're 2 to 3 minute of angle guns. So at 250 yards, you're talking, 6, 7, 8 inch shot dispersion. All things being equal. The cartridge, if you're a hand loader, does tend to stretch a little bit as a consequence of the actions that the gun is mostly chambered in, the lever actions and the way they lock up. A lot of them lock up at the rear of the bolt and allows for microscopic stretching. But the basic flat nose bullets prevent chain fire, and that's where it's handicapped. This is a Hornady Lever Revolution 160 grain FTX projectile. This rubber tip prevents the cartridge in front of it from igniting the primer. But vice versa, the flat or round nose does the same thing in a tubular magazine. The cartridge has very modest recoil. I think in all the energy calculations, maybe 10 foot-pounds, where like a 30-06 might have double that. Most anybody can handle a 30-30, and it's very useful. In its history, the cartridge has been used only by hunters, civilians, law enforcement officers. The military in World War I and II obtained quantities of these rifles, and foreign militaries. They're basically issued to guards guarding defense industry sites in the respective countries. They weren't put into war service. It was more like guard roles. But the paper ballistics, well, Hornady's website is FTX 160 grain, the muzzle 2,400 feet a second, 2,040 foot-pounds of energy, 100 yards, 2150 is the velocity, 1643 is the energy, 200 yards is 1917, 300 yards of velocity is down to 1700. At 300 yards, the FTX retains 1,022 foot-pounds of energy. So the old magic number for deer-sized game was 1,000 foot-pounds. It retains that out to 300 yards. The regular 170 grain round nose, my own hand loads here, 2200 the muzzle, and this is from Sierra's Ballistics. At 100 yards, it's sighted for 150, that's a 0. At 100 yards, it'd be 1 inch and 2/3 above the line of aim, and at 200, it'd be 4 1/4 inches low, and at 250, it'd be 11 1/4 inches low, and it's more than adequate. This cartridge is primarily a hunting cartridge, recreational cartridge. The cartridge is also capable if you had to use it in a defensive role. Obviously, any rifle you use inside your house for self-defense has enough power to penetrate a human adversary, a bad guy. If you had not so much the Winchester, unless you got real good eyes with iron sights. I don't anymore with my being older. When I was young though, I could. If you know your holdovers or you know your rifle, you could engage. And obviously this is all hypothetical. It'd have to be the total breakdown of the government. There's no police, no rule of law. You're defending your suburban community or whatever to engage people at a distance in self-defense. The rule of law, obviously, you shoot somebody 20 yards away, it's generally considered murder. But it could be anything, a war, collapse of the electric grid was hacked and no electricity, whatever scenario you can come up with, there's no rule of law. This is a capable cartridge on human bad guys out to about 300 yards. At 300 yards, 170 grain round nose, Remington or Federal, store ammo. It will drop about 20 inches. So tap it a hat hold, you're gonna hit somewhere in the boiler works down below. And in that type of scenario, you're not gonna be in running gun battles, hopefully not, because you won't survive long. It might be taking a shot or two and scooting, and that's how you pump concealment. But that's going off into the weeds. But it is fully capable of hitting a bad guy at 300 yards, which was the original criteria of the German Sturmgewehr rifle concept when they come out with it. 0 to 300 yards was most combat. Is it designed as a combat rifle? No. Has it been used as such or in fights? Yes, it has, by lawmen and others. But that's just the other esoteric usage you could come up with this cartridge. But it is a fine close range hunting cartridge. Deer sized game, that's what it's optimized for. Like I said, every game in probably North and South America has been taken with it. If you are acquiring a few firearms, or you just new to the hobby, or you should have one rifle that shoots the 30-30. The ammunition is going to be found anywhere, pretty much in North America. Hardware stores, little grocery, whoever sells ammunition, little grocery stores, like a 22-1 rifle. It's ubiquitous. It's been around for 130 years, and it's quite useful. I'll get to the rifle now. I'm going to show it here because it's windy outside, and then we'll go outside and we're not going to do the shooting test. But what we have here is I guess you could call it a pre-war 1894 Winchester. This one was manufactured in the very beginning of 1942. The United States got into World War I officially at the very end of 1941, second week of December. I think that's when all the war declarations were occurred. Winchester probably made these for a month or two into 42 and then shut down civilian production, and they resumed them after the war. It's a John Browning design. The carbine has a 20-inch barrel. Some of them had 24-inch barrels, some of them had 16-inch barrels, but this is a 24-inch barrel. It would normally have a buckhorn rear sight in this slot. This has been filled in, not filled in, it's a machined wedge that fits nicely with the barrel slid into the dovetail. There's the front sight, barrel band. The wood on this gun is all smooth. There's no checkering, it's plain. It's got a simple sling swivel setup on the underneath. This is a M1 Garand style, military sling, hook and loop sling. I got this gun 12, 14 years ago. Walked into a gun store, sitting on a rack. And it's funny, guns come into favor and not. And this was, I guess, out of favor. All the black rifles were in favor. And I got this pretty reasonably, really reasonably. And it shoots pretty good. It has a tang sight on it. At one time it had a Williams peep sight, but that was missing. Someone put the tang sight on with an aperture, and we're going to try that out. The action on the 94, basically Browning elongated it from the 92 and made it so the bottom of the action cams out of the receiver to give the room for the extra length of the 30-30 cartridge to be fed in. If you look, the extractor's on the top of the bolt, dead center. This gun ejects straight out the top. Later variants of this rifle, like I said, they were made from 1895 onwards, to this day under various companies. Very hard to mount a scope on this gun. And that's what's one downside. That and the open action, you get a lot of crap in there, banging around in the woods. But very reliable mechanism. It is complicated. You know, to take this apart, I have taken it apart. There's certain screws that are to be removed in order, pins that got to be driven out in exact order to break the whole gun down. Not necessary to maintain it, but I'll go into that in a second. This is the top eject, 7-shot magazine tube on a 20-inch. It'll hold 7 rounds, and you can top it off one in the chamber. King's gate, loading gate. Not to freaking we got live round ammunition. You shove it in there, stick it in there, and that's it. You keep feeding the rounds in. The spring-loaded gate. You go to put another round in. You push the gate in. It'll push the round out of the way, and you put the round in the gun. That's how it's loaded. Has a half cock notch. All right. I'm gonna clear this gun. I'm gonna open it. I don't even have to close the bolt. There we go. I really don't want to put the rounds in the chamber. Right. Take that out. That's basically how it's loaded. The rifle has, it's full cock. You cycle a bolt, cocks the hammer all the way back, chambers around, and you pull the trigger, it's ready to fire. I don't like dry firing. I put an empty case in it before. I use my trigger pull gauge. It breaks at 6 1/4 pounds, very cleanly. I can't remember the last time I shot this, maybe a few years ago, but we're gonna try it cold. I'm gonna do try and hit it 100 yards with this on the shooting test. I got 3 kinds of ammo. I got 150 grain hunting shack, that's a factory load. I have some Remington 170 grain core lock. Yeah, core lock soft point. And I got my hand loads, which are 160 grain Hornady FTX. I'll run two of each over the chronograph, just to get an idea of the velocity. I've chronographed these before, these Hornadys. Says 2,300 feet a second. We'll see if we get that. I also have 170 grain Sierra flat nose, 2190 feet a second, my hand loads. They're both loaded with lever revolution powder, and if you're a hand loader, 170 grain Sierra round nose, 36.3 grains of lever revolution, Remington primer, large rifle. Winchester 94. In fact, I put the rifle, I tested it in. This one I did not put the rifle, but 160 grain Hornady FTX, 36.5 grains of lever revolution powder. Gives pretty good performance. Like I mentioned, these were used in both World Wars, or bought by the military in both World Wars, these 1894 rifles. It was made by the original Winchester company, 1895 to 1980, when John Olin sold the company to the employees. Became the U.S. Repeating Arms Company. 80 to 89, it went bankrupt. I believe Browning bought them out. And Browning's obviously owned by FN, and it stayed manufacturing rifles in New Haven, Connecticut, until 2006, and shut down operation. They are making these rifles today, but they're made in Japan, Miraku. They make a very fine rifle, but there's something about a iconic American rifle being made in Japan that just don't sit with me well. But this is an 82-year-old example of it, and they pretty much all function the same. The locking is accomplished in the rear. This bolt that goes up and down behind the locking bolt goes up behind the actual bolt, and that's how the lockup's achieved. The action does stretch the brass a little bit, but it's an extremely reliable mechanism. To maintain this thing, for cleaning, it's not necessary to field strip the gun. you can open up the action and access all the parts you need to clean and lubricate. Put the gun upside down in a rifle rest. Clean it from the muzzle with either a coated rod, or you get a brass bore ride guide, the guide that you can put the cleaning rod through. Similar how you clean an M1 Garand, bore guide. It's a conical brass device with a hole in it that the cleaning rod will pass through, so you don't damage the muzzle and the threads. You can clean it out, blast it with gun scrubber, blow it out with air. That's what I generally do. I usually use automotive brake cleaner. Works good. Brush it out with a nylon brush. Like I said, I've taken this apart, but it's a involved operation. It's a semi-complex mechanism, and there's no need to take it apart for normal maintenance. And this one here is 82 years old and still tight, still runs good, and we'll shoot it. Do my regular tests. Chronograph. I'll put this camera on the rifle, cycling the ammunition, loading and cycling it. Comparative recoil test with a 223 bolt action gun, the Savage. Comparative energy, I'll shoot the little 8-inch plates. I painted all my plates the other day. I measured the plate that's out at 220 yards, that's 14 inches hanging from the cable there. I painted that too. I'm going to do a terminal effects test. I'll probably use the 150 grain hunting shack just to see what it does. I think I have 4 water jugs. Hopefully that's enough to capture the projectile. Comparative recoil, ballistic test. I'll shoot this offhand with the camera on me, so you cycle the gun at maybe the 50-yard torso plate or a couple of the other plates, just plinking, showing operation. Then I'll come back for the summary, and that'll be part 1 of my ode to the 3030 and the very excellent Winchester 1894 or Model 94 rifle. I'm kind of partial to the pre-1980 made Winchesters. I know there's a lot of, they simplify production in certain ways after 1964, and Winchester collectors go nuts with that stuff. Me, they're fine rifles. This just happens to be I guess a pre-64 one, but it can't be really pre-war. I guess it is pre-war, but it was made in 1942. And that's according to Winchester site. But let's go to the shooting demonstrations, and anything I forgot, I'll wrap up in a summary. Okay. I'm going to load all the 6 rounds I'm going to fire through the chronograph. I put the 170s in first, followed by the 160 grain FTX quantity hand loads, and the first 2, or the last in the magazine, are going to be the 150 grain hunting shack flat points. So basically, king gate, push it all the way in, and then the spring tension gets tight almost to the end, and that's it. First up will be the 150 grain hunting shack. Now call them out. $21.99. $22.01. Now the first of the Hornady FTX projectile. $23.27. Zipping along there. $23.14. If you notice the ejection, straight out the top of the gun. These are now the 170 grain. These last 2 shots. 2247. And 2202. And that'll be our chronograph data for the 3030 here, 3 different loads. Let me stop the cameras and clean this up. 2199. $22.01. Now the first of the Hornady FTX projectile. $23.27. Zipping along there. $23.14. You notice the ejection straight out the top of the gun. These are now the 170 grain. These last two shots. $22.47. $22.02. I'm here to do my comparative recoil demonstration. One shot from the Savage 223 bolt gun versus the 1894 Winchester. I think I'll be shooting 150 grain HS hunting shack ammunition. One shot a piece. Then I'm going to move to the ballistic pendulums, 8-inch steel plates, 223 on the center plate. The right plate will be the 30-30. So let me get the rifles. 223 first. Comparative recoil test. One shot, 55 grain 223 round out of the Savage Axis bolt gun. And then one out of the 30-30, 150 grain hunting shack, 150 grain jacketed saw point. And then I'll go to the ballistic pendulum test, 8-inch plates. Center plate will be the 223. And the right plate will be the 30-30. But first, a comparative recoil. Make sure I'm in the frame here. That's good. Pop the 100 yard there. And our Winchester Model 94. And a little bit of recoil, but not bad. It's very, very manageable, even with the steel butt plate. Let me just pause the camera and we're going to set up for the ballistic pendulum. Center plate 223. We'll see how it is. I'll have this camera on me. And the right plate will be the 30-30. Comparative energy imparted. 223 center plate. Right, that's clear. Now the 30-30. And quite a bit more energy there. And we'll lose the brass. And all the leaves. And that'll be our comparative energy test. Let me put these guns down and clean this mess up. my 100-yard bench here. I'm going to fire 3 shots at a Hornady 160 grain FTX hand loads through the aperture sight, see what we can hit here. Load the gun. Now, my ears on. I'm going to use a, I think I'll use a 6 o'clock hold. Let's pause this and go check our target out. Okay, at the 100-yard target on my second camera here. The other one will be on me shooting. I head back to the bench. Okay, not too bad. Too a little high with them loads, but that's what iron sight aperture at 100 yards. At 100 yards, I get this as an internal mic. Not a bad little group there for the iron sights. It looks like about 2 MOA. 2 in the close, 1 fold. It's holding about here. About 4 inches high, but more than acceptable to hunt deer at 100 yards. Them 160 FTX projectiles tend to be the most accurate 30-30s I shoot. Sometimes the 170s are like that, but got good results with them or the FTX. Okay, at my thermal effects test. We got this in the frame here. Let's see. Alright. I'm going to do 2 cameras. This way I capture it. I've run out of water jugs. I have a half-gallon water jug in the front. A little witness board. 1-gallon water jug. 3/4 inch piece of plywood simulating heavy bone. 2 more water jugs. Another 3/4 inch piece of plywood. The 2 3/4 inch sheets have been shot once. They've been marked. Moved off to the side. I have another piece of 3/4 on the back in case the projectile bounces, it don't roll off the table. So I'm going to set the other camera in motion, and for this test, because I'll be doing 2 other 30-30 tests, I'm going to use a 150 grain hunting shack jacketed soft point, flat point, and see how that performs. All right. Let me pause this and clean this up, and we'll autopsy it. Good result. Recovered the projectile. Let's chronicle its travel here. First jug entered, blew it to smithereens. Second jug, so about 9 or 10 inches of water, entered, blew it to smithereens. It punched the label from the jug into this witness board. Blew that big hole through the board. A 3/4 inch piece of ply after this 8 inches of water. That's the entrance. That's the exit. Expanded quite a bit. Punched through the second full-size water jug, in and out. It entered the third water jug. That's the entrance. And it put a little dimple on the other side. Projectile was in this 3.5 or 4th water jug. We had a little one. That's the dent in the plywood that the bullet caused, resting against the water jug. The projectile expanded quite a bit. Turn it upside down. Did a nice job. Adequate penetration, punch through the wood. Would perform well on a deer, a mule deer, you know, or even a larger animal. But like I said, the 30-30 or the 30 Winchester centerfire is optimized for deer-sized game and smaller. Although it's used on everything on North America and South America continent. And this cartridge is very popular in South America. For the shooting test, I'm going to do one more. I'm going to fire 4 or 5 offhand with this camera on me, just to show the gun cycling. You know, the way it. I'm just going to keep it on my shoulder and shoot down at 50 or 80 yards there, whatever. Just hit the plates. Hopefully you'll hear the plates ringing in the background. Let me put the. Get some ammo. I'll break. See if I can get it on camera. And shove them all the way in. You can let them hang out a little. It's up to you. Sometimes it pinches your finger, but the loading gate. But when you push in, it moves around out of the way so you can stick the next one in. The more rounds that go in the gun, the more spring tension and the harder it is. I always put the gun on half cock when I'm doing this. It's the only safety on this gun besides the one between your ears. It's quite windy out in these woods and there's tree limbs dropping, so I'm going to hurry it up. I don't want to get clobbered with a tree limb. All right, gonna do 5 shots. Oh, that's the empty from before. It's 100 yard. That's a 200 yard plate I just hit. I wish that was on camera. And I've cut my finger on the tank sight. Got blood on my glasses. You can see the top ejection. That's why I don't like the tank sight. The gun's a little hot now. Not bad for an 82-year-old gun. pretty accurate. Do the job today is when it was made. Let me stop this and we'll go in for our summary. Okay, back for the summary. Forgot to mention the intro. Up until the time of 1980 when Olin sold Winchester to the employees, they made 7 million of these rifles. So extremely popular gun. I believe today, in the 40 years that has passed, the different Winchester enterprises or successors to the original Winchester company, U.S. Repeating Arms, and then the Browning and FN owned Winchester brands. They shut down production in 2006 in New Haven, Connecticut, and the Miraku, Japan makes these today. So I think they built actually an extra million, so 8 million total. The first highly successful, viable, smokeless powder commercial cartridge is the 3030, very fine cartridge within its lane, within its design parameters. The 1894 Winchester, very thin, light, handy carbine, 6 3/4 pounds. I did, in the testing, tear my thumb up on the tank sight recoil, ripped it on this side here, one of the last shots. Went out, did the chronograph, with 3 different loads. I had 150 grain hunting shack ammo, small ammunition producer I had laying around here. Only 2 shots. They averaged 2,200 feet a second. That translates to 1,612 foot-pounds of energy. The 160 grain Hornady FTX projectile, that are my hand loads, 2,320 feet per second, 1,913 feet per second with the FTX Spire Point projectiles, which tend to shoot flatter than the round nose and flat points. And Remington 170 grain jacketed soft point, 2,225 feet a second, 1,869 foot-pounds of energy. I showed the rifle, the top eject, did the chronograph, did the comparative recoil with the 223. Not much recoil with the light Winchester 1894. Steel butt plate, there's no recoil absorption there, but it's really not, doesn't hurt, it's not unmanageable, it's a pleasant gun to shoot. Ballistic pendulums, 223 versus the 150 grain 3030. Obviously the 3030 imparts a lot more energy than the 223 on the 8-inch ballistic plates. Did the 100-yard accuracy test. Like I said, this gun has a Tang sight with an aperture on it, and I think I sighted it in the last time I shot it with I think it was 170 grain Federals, round nose, and I used the 160 grain FTX projectiles. So they flew about 4 or 5 inches higher than the point of aim, but that's to be expected because they're traveling at higher velocity and they shed less velocity going down range. So they tend to be flatter shooting bullets. 3 shots, basically 2 MOA group. 2 shots with 3/4 of an inch. And that was M2. And that was the flyer, but that's just me. Aiming through these iron sights with these old eyes. I will say though, it's light years. An aperture sight like this tank sight, is light years ahead of the V-notch, buckhorn sights that come with this rifle. Plus the sight radius is longer. Instead of being here, you're almost doubling it by putting it on the back of the gun. The accuracy test, I did offhand shooting, just plinking plates, and actually the one plate I plinked was the 200-yard one with this aperture sight, which I get a kick out of. It's fully capable, if your eyes are good enough with, you know, iron sights or aperture sights, to you know, you take a deer at 150, 200 yards with it. A scoped 30-30 might be a little bit better with a 4 power on it, but it did the job. Did the thermal effects test. Had a had 3 full 1-gallon water jugs. They're 6 inches in depth of water, and a ½ gallon, which is like 4 inches or 3 inches. At the ½ gallon, the gallon, between the ½ gallon and the gallon, I had a witness board, a little piece of fiber board. Had a, after the first 1-gallon water jug, 3/4 inch piece of plywood simulating bone. Another water jug. No, I didn't have the witness board, I'm sorry. The witness board was between the 2 last water jugs, and followed up with another piece of 3/4 inch ply. So you had basically 10 inches of water, 3/4 inch piece of ply, 12 inches of water with a witness board between it, and another piece of ply in the end. The projectile blew up the first water jug, the ½ gallon, the second water jug, the 1 gallon. The bullet started expanding, punched a nice big hole through the 3/4 inch piece of plywood, which simulates a heavy bone. Through the next 2 water jugs, witness board was between the one. Blew a big hole in the witness board and stuffed the labels into the witness board. Left a dent on the last piece of plywood, and the projectile was in the last jug, the 4th jug, and I recovered it, and I'm going to put it on it's right here, and put it on the case. And that's the base of it. I'm going to show up my fingers there. You see the rifle marks. I measured it with my calipers. Its widest point expanded to 590 thousandths of an inch, so 59 caliber. I weighed it. It retained 139 grains of weight of the original 150, so it's like 92.6 grains of retained weight, and you know, very good performance. It's for I don't know what brand bullet they use. I assume it's a component from one of the manufacturers, Spear or a Hornady or a Sierra, but it performed well. I'm going to do part 2 and part 3 of this video. Part 2 will be the Marlin 336. I'm going to do away with a couple of the shooting tests. Basically the chronograph I'm going to do away with, the recoil comparison with the 223, and the ballistic plates, as it would be redundant. And this will be the longer video, the first one. The other ones will be shorter. I'll just do a brief intro on the 30-30 cartridge itself, and then a rifle, you know, cleaning it, field stripping it, and then shoot it at distance, 100 yards. I'll shoot it offhand at the steel plates, do a thermal effects test. This time I used the 160 grain Hornady FTX. With this I used the 150 grain Hunting Shack jacket of soft point. And then the last, that should make the video maybe a half hour. This one's gonna run almost an hour. With that, if you should inherit one of these or acquire one of these fine old Winchester 1894 or Model 94 rifles, they're a lot of fun to shoot, a lot of fun to carry in the woods. Iconic American gun, they really are, and is the cartridge. It's both of them, the 30-30 and this rifle that it was designed for. Iconic pieces of American history, and still useful today. You know, makes a fine little hunting carbine. With that, if you like this content, like and share and subscribe or comment, and read the comments. I'll get back to you if you have a question or something. And I'm Old Gun Guy, and you have a good evening.